Hey everybody, this is Dr. Kevin McGovern, and it is time for the 105th edition of the Prove It Live podcast. Believe that or not. Got a good show for you tonight. Talking about an elbow injury to probably the game's biggest and most popular player for the second time. But without further ado, I have to introduce you to my very handsome co-host, decked out in Chicago White Sox gear with, I'm going to say Carlton Fisk is probably on the back of there if I had to guess. My very handsome co-host, Mr. Mike Frary. Michael?
Thank you very much, Kevin. Wonderful introduction as always, and great guest. Yes, it is Carlton Fisk on the back of my Chicago White Sox. I don't know who else I would get. I don't know if there's maybe Blackjack McDowell. I don't think. I'm not sure he was as big. Maybe Harold Baines.
Harold Baines, Greg Luzinski.
Okay, Frank Thomas. Some more from
Frank Thomas. Did Bo Jackson play for the White Sox for 5 minutes?
He did for 5 minutes. Yeah. Mostly known as a Royal, though, of course.
Yes, a Royale with cheese. Yes,
Royal cheese. But yeah, thank you. I am Mike Frary. And thanks for that introduction from the farm PPI. I'm excited to talk about. So I've been wanting to talk about this for a little bit because this isn't. It's not old news. It's not brand new, but it's pretty fresh. And by now you probably know what we're talking about. We're talking about an injury of one of the biggest stars in baseball, and it's the elbow injury to Shohei Ohtani. And in fact, I learned of the news from you, Kevin, right? I got a text from you one day, and I was not on social media much that day. And I remember going, "Oh no, I didn't hear about this," and then immediately did. So what was your first instinctive thought when you saw the news?
I told you so. I mean, unfortunately, I hate to be cynical like that.
Yeah.
But it's an epidemic. It's not changing. And we could probably talk for hours why it's not changing. But so it's been pretty steady social media since this happened, back and forth. And there's a line really drawn in the sand. And it is, and the people that are on the different sides really blows me away.
Yeah.
And we've had this discussion. We've had colleagues like other physical therapists. I remember talking about Chris Sale and this guy. Oh, well, he's made $30 million. Fantastic. Okay, but I'm not talking about Chris Sale. I'm talking about the kids who emulate Chris Sale. Like Mike, I know that while we were kids, you could probably do every single Red Sox batting guy, hitter, pitcher, emulate them, move like them. I could do that for the Yankees. I could do my best right-handed Ron Guidry, my best Dave Winfield. We're not talking about the 0.00% of players that make it to the show. It's all the kids that we maybe just saw in the Little League World Series who are entering the danger zone. And what's the danger zone? That's post-puberty. We go from small diamond to big diamond, and we're trying to overextend ourselves, whatever happened, and we've got these arms. That's who I'm talking to. But it is just heated, and we know a lot of people. There's the drive lines, the tread athletics. They derive their income from this velocity training, which if we go back to Bull Durham, if you can't hit a fastball, you can't play, right? I think that was right. Yep. So it's, and I think the analytical people are lumped in here. It's just when's the next 300 game winner?
Yeah, that's
never, right? So it's not getting better, and then they'll say, "Oh, well, wins don't matter." Well, everything doesn't matter, right? It's these analytical people. Hits don't matter, batting average doesn't matter, wins don't matter. Something eventually has to matter, because you got to win 100, 102 baseball games to get, to get into the playoffs.
Well, I got a point on that too, and that you bring up a great point, because this is what's happening with ideologies. We wouldn't get into it, of course. We could talk all day too about this. It's not just baseball, this is in general, right? I mean, it's happening in society, politics, etc. But people are adjusting the game to sort of the metrics rather than the other way around. So it's, oh, people are getting hurt, they're not lasting long, they can't pitch long enough, they can't pitch into the sixth inning. So let's not recognize that there's a problem and try to correct it. No. Let's just adapt, our how we view success differently now in baseball. And let's not even that, let's change. That's coming, because it's not going to be 5 innings for a win for much longer. That's going to be the case, right? 5 innings for a win. That's definitely has to change, because they're going to continue to move forward. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully we do recognize that there's something amiss, but yeah, it's sad. And that's why I don't understand, Kev. I get, back up. I understand the logic of the people who have a financial gain to resisting this, right? But I don't understand the people who don't have a financial, who defend those people and defend, like back foot drag. They defend it so vehemently. The ones that don't have a financial gain, like it's bananas to me. I don't understand.
It really blows my mind. I mean, if you pull apart my Twitter feed, these, and then it's just such a lot to unpack. Yes. So you'll have these pitching coach gurus who think that they took a crash course in kinesiology.
Yeah.
I get into one Tom House disciple about dragging the back foot. And he literally states something out of his mouth that's 1,000% false, saying, this was the best. The body will only go as fast as its ability to slow down. 1,000% false. Okay. If that were true, there would be no non-contact ACL injuries. Right? I mean,
Right.
Odell Beckham, classic example. Going too fast, can't stop, boom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just like they make up stuff, everyone agrees to it, and then it becomes no, because I don't know if it's like the whole cancel cult, like they'll just get so many people, and I've been taking the Mike Ferry. So rather than argue, I've been just saying, please explain that. So someone literally said the other day, because again, I went about tennis. I don't know any UCL injury ever in tennis. I'm sure, I don't know. I've never heard of one. And someone literally said, well, that's because the grip on the racket stabilizes the shoulder blade different. And I said, well, please explain. Gone, crickets, right? Like, and then you can't throw with gravity, because it's just stuff like, it was just like, this long
nonsensical
thing about, I can't even, I've read it like 3 times. I'm like, what are you, first of all, if you're trying to teach something, okay, rule number 1, you have to, in order to know something, you've got to be able to retain the knowledge, be able to then teach you as if you were a 5th grader. So I've got to know it and then be able to process the information and regurgitate to you that you could understand it. All these guys do are use these big words, and people take it as true because they don't understand it.
Right.
And when you press them, they can't explain it, because they're just regurgitating something that they heard. But it's just like, you have to drag your foot in order to get, I was just like, what do you have to, almost like you have to drag your foot in order to get pelvic rotation. I'm like, no, dude.
Transfer. I remember you telling me about it.
I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, that was it. You have to drag your foot in order to transfer weight to the other half.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you just completely reinvented the golf swing of draggers. Like, it's just like, I don't even know how to explain it.
Well, it's funny because you're right, and people, especially the ones that just hear something and then it sounds nice and they regurgitate it. It's especially that's especially true when it comes in a nice package, like with what you said earlier. Someone said, the body will only go as fast as its ability to slow down. Someone goes, oh wow, well, that sounds like that guy's smart. He must know, and that makes sense, right? But so someone hears that and they go, and look, I'm outside of baseball, I've been guilty of it because you get information, you want to be informed, you want to be educated on things. And so I don't have the time to research everything and look up the facts. So what I do is I rely on people who I believe do research things and look it up, and I take their word for it sometimes, right? Most of the time, if I'm honest. But eventually, hopefully I look that up and find out for myself. But I kind of get it. But it seems that nobody is ultimately following up and making sure that the person they're listening to and regurgitating are given the correct stuff. And then, they're so quick to throw it out there on social media as if it is fact, as if it's some sort of, scientifically proven method. And
Right.
clearly it's not, clearly. And they have no stats on their size other than, you could argue velocity, right? So people say, wait, guys are throwing harder, which, by the way, I don't really believe that either. I
don't believe it either.
These guns are juiced. I think the guns are juiced. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
these guys threw hard, dude. Goose Gossage threw hard. Nolan Ryan threw hard.
Bob
Gibson. These guys threw hard.
Absolutely.
But again, except for Nolan Ryan, I don't believe there's a perfect game or a no hitter of anyone in the history of baseball who's thrown over 95 miles an hour.
Imagine that. Yeah.
Right? Because guess what? Again, everyone can hit a fastball.
Right.
But it's just, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, Bob Feller, we know Bob Feller threw at least 98, right? That was proven again. And I think that was one of those ones that was like 96 at the plate, with those big old radars. So, so technology, if guys, let's say for the sake of argument, my opinion, if people are actually getting higher reads, and it's not that these guns are juiced a little bit, because look, in my facility, we've had pro guys throw, seen them on the gun, they're good fastballs, 92, 93, whatever, no 101s, 102s. But let's, for the sake of argument, say I'm wrong, and they are throwing harder. I don't think they're throwing harder. I think the technology's gotten better. They're picking up the ball just a little bit quicker. Instead of 5 feet out of the hand, maybe it's a foot out of the hand, whatever it might be. But, there's nothing that I see and today's mechanics that show me that guys are doing anything so dramatically different that are throwing, 10 miles an hour harder than guys in the 90s.
Yeah, and it's perfect segue. So, two mechanics, you're going to get the armcare.guy, again, I was waiting for that company to come out, and say that, Shohei Ohtani's arm was because of weakness, the guy that can hit a baseball 450 feet, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure his arm's going to pass strength tests, but again, he's a inverted, whatever you want to call it, MW,
yeah.
Arm is behind him and the arm lags behind. And people will look at that picture, see that elbow, like, dude, the elbow only does flexion and extension. It doesn't move the other way. There's a tiny little ligament that's protecting the elbow from that way. It cannot stand a valgus force. It just can't do it. And they'll look at that picture, see his arm all the way behind him, completely, huge stride length, has no ability to turn the trunk and say, nope, it's nothing to do with mechanics. And I just, and the kid, here's the problem. The 13-year-old kid, our kids, the age group that we work, they see that, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, no, and then they believe it. And then they start with these, now it's gone on to plyo balls. Like, it's kids today just do not move well at all, right? Yep. Could you throw a plyo? Like, I don't really know. You don't need plyo balls, but even lifting, bench press, squats, deadlifts, these kids cannot do those movements. They can't even do a normal squat. They can't stand on 1 foot for more than 10 seconds. I see in my practice. I've been doing it for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I got I got pretty high level athletes in there that need to be trained. Now, once they're trained, then they're going to be leaps and bounds above everybody else. But the basic movements kids can't do, and then we take that chassis and we gun it and we put our foot on the gas until something breaks. And that's the problem, in my opinion, no matter what it is.
Yep, I agree. And it's, I always say too, it's so specialized, and because I've had people ask me to say, well, what were mechanics? Because I would always argue like injuries are worse than they ever were. They weren't this bad 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40, 50.
Especially
And they go,
frequency.
right. And so I get a lot of people go, well, so what are you arguing, that mechanics were just, much better back then? I'm like, no, but there was a lot more conditioning. There was a lot less specialization. Like, we were throwing something all the time, whether it's a football, rocks.
Went outside and played.
Yeah.
Made
Toss
up
a tennis ball
games,
against it. Yes.
Moved.
That's
Now
right.
kids, the only time they move is when they're doing an organized activity.
Right.
And if the instructor of that organized activity is teaching them the wrong thing, boom. Or not teaching them at all, right? They're not, the body the body will figure it out. But it just, that you go back to what you had said before, like when you originally had your program, no one was doing strength and conditioning in like, what do we start that? Like 2006, 7, somewhere in there, right?
10, yeah. Close to 10.
Well, so no one was doing that, right?
No.
And then we started doing that, but we took a medical approach to it. Then everyone just, these guys do, let's copycat it. But there's so much goes into. It's like they're stealing the plans of the car, but they don't have all the pieces to put together.
Bingo.
And
So-
is deadlifting fantastic for your posterior kinetic chain? Absolutely. Has to be done with precision.
Yeah. And because if not, it's awful for your lower back.
100%.
Right. And so you're going to hurt yourself. And so that's it. There's a great quote from Rudyard Kipling where he says, you can steal my ideas, you can steal my ideas, but you can't steal my mind. I'll leave you guessing and 2 years behind or whatever. And that's it. And that was, I always love that quote, because you do see, and that's part of the problem too, is that this is a copycat industry. It really is. And so someone sees, we talk about it, someone on social media that's teaching something, and that guy has, 50,000 views on that. He's got 250,000 followers. They're going to go, all right, I'm going to teach that same thing. And right. Why wouldn't I? Guy, looks like he knows what he's talking about. People are listening to him. So it's a very much copycat business, and I guess good and bad, but unfortunately the bad's far outweighing the good. I mean, I see it on the hitting side. I mean, like the same thing, like I just was talking to a parent today about, wants to join the program, and he said, look, he's a really hard worker. He's super coachable. And he says, he's just over the years, he's had, a bunch of coaches, and he's got a bunch of different things. And, he goes and practices them. But, he doesn't really understand what he's practicing. And that's the problem. And so this kid, you're a kid, you're 13 years old, you're 12 years old, you're going to listen to your coach, whoever your coach is. Good players listen to their coaches. And so then they go and play it. And I said, unfortunately, that's the problem, is that this kid's putting all this work in. He's got a phenomenal work ethic, and he's getting bad information. And so that's making his swing worse and worse and worse. And that's why he struggles as he goes up the age ranks. And in pitching, it's not only is it going to affect your performance, or maybe it doesn't, but it's definitely going to be that same exact thing, but in the way of potential injury. And so it's more important, right?
Yeah. I mean, we know the cause. Like, you can say it's look at every Tommy John, including the actual Tommy John himself, and you're going to see this arm lag, right? So maybe let's try to, think about something else. I even watched today, like a cricket throw, and I'm like, oh my God, he's accelerating downhill.
Yes.
They're reaching way back, but he doesn't fire his arm because they're bouncing. They're going to bounce the ball, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, we have to learn from other sports. Like, one guy telling me, oh, you have to separate your hands, you get no power. Okay. A quarterback can throw a ball 70, some people 80 yards, right? if they separate their hands like this, it's called a strip sack, right? They'll have a 2-minute career.
Yep.
So it's just like, and it's all coming down to like, they think their finances are being attacked, and what I just want to save arms, right? I don't. You can, of course, everyone goes to, well, I work with so and so. Great, you can have your LSU's, you can have your South Carolina, whatever. You can have them all. Take them all. I want my 12 to 17-year-old kid that I could save his arm so he can go to a Division II or Division III school and then grow up to be an accountant and have a bunch of friends who play baseball. Or you could have a Steven Strasburg who made millions of dollars but has limited use. A guy who was told perfect mechanics can't feed himself with his right arm.
Yeah.
That's sad.
It is sad. And it's the first thing you said sad too, which is, because you hear that a lot. Well, his last coach, he was a coach at coached on the Cape, and he coached with North Carolina or whatever. It's like, okay, I know enough, been doing this long enough now, that doesn't impress me. It's like, is he knowledgeable though? Because that doesn't tell me that he's knowledgeable. It doesn't tell me that he knows what to teach, because all this stuff is being taught at the highest levels, higher than North Carolina. Higher. I'm not saying North Carolina, I'm just using that as an example. It's not, it's a hypothetical. And so, yeah, that's not going to impress me in and of itself. And that's why it's such an important topic. And why we talk about it so much is because this is all the way up the ranks. And as we know, everything from batting gloves, right? So you look at the stuff that kids wear in the field. Okay. No one's out there with a Franklin glove. No one's out there with Franklin cleats or Franklin jersey, even, right? Teams aren't buying, but they have Franklin batting gloves. Why? Because big leaguers wear Franklin batting gloves, right? Right. Bruce Bolt is like the big one now, right? But people still wear Franklins because they have deals with Franklin, and that trickles down. So not just the equipment, what they're doing, like you said, that's going to trickle down into the youth players. And so it's really important. So we talked about a little bit how, the right way to do it. You mentioned it, right? Which is throwing down and with gravity. And that's the other thing too. The crazy thing here, in my opinion, is this isn't rocket science. This isn't some major adjustment you have to make to your throwing mechanics. It's really not. Because I learned this when I was, this was like when I first met you, you were still in school, right? And so you were after school, but it was before I was done playing, before I started really managing. So probably in my 20s, I learned how to do this, and so if you can learn it in your 20s inside of it, it was really fast. Anyone can learn this. Anybody can learn how to do this. And that's important to understand too. But yeah, keeping your arm in your glove longer. So, think of more of a quarterback throw, as Kevin mentioned. And when you do it, when you start rotating and your mind is to think that you have to throw to something, your arm's never going to get stuck where it is. It's going to ultimately rotate up into position, and then you can finish down. Right. As you throw as a pitcher, you always want to bring your chest to the ground anyway, right? You want to finish out in front, your chest down to the ground, your hand out in front. So the finish is similar in appearance. It's really about how you're getting there and making sure that the arm's not too late and not stopping all that force and energy you're producing with your back leg as you drive to the target. Is that pretty accurate?
1000%. So I want to share my screen here because I often, one of the drills that I do is I tell pitchers, when I see someone dragging their foot, I'll tell them, all right, let's throw the next pitch, and envision that you have a folding table in front of you and you need to follow through and smash that folding table.
Like a Buffalo Bills fan.
Yep. And it's almost immediate that their lower body changes and that back leg comes with them, right? Yeah. Because they realize in their head, there's no way I could smash the table. And the difference between smashing a table and smashing a board, or throwing a pitch and smashing a board, is about 2 inches in where we let the ball go. So I'm going to share my screen to prove what I just said here. You see our young fellow here with all the boards?
Yep.
And let's just play him here. Oh, what's it? What's that? Wow, that looks. Oh, Mike, is that like a throwing motion, Michael?
I know. It's crazy.
No, Michael, no. Let's see, he's turning his hips.
Turn his hips. Yep.
Oh my goodness. Now, the next question, of course, do you think he trained to break, I don't know how many boards that was, throwing bleeping plyo balls?
Right.
Probably,
Yeah, probably not. Probably not. Yep.
Right. And what's the difference? That was a hammer fist. That's a fastball. Very simple. Just pronating our forearm.
Yeah. Right.
Same
And
move. Same move.
absolutely,
Same
yeah.
exact move.
So he's throwing a curveball essentially. That's all he was doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. So
Right.
yeah.
Palm in,
There's this,
yeah.
Yeah. There's this. Right. So that's what drives me nuts. And then of course you say that, and either debate stops or call. We know what social media does. It's just crazy. But
Yeah. In terms of name calling, pretty
yeah,
quickly.
for the parents out there, any sport is highly technical, right? And you can't learn the technical aspect of a sport until you learn how to move correctly and have the basics of human movement. So any strength and conditioning program should not be about how much I can lift, how many times I can whip the ball against the wall. How about how good is my human movement, right? How good is my flexibility? How good is my range of motion? Am I lifting my arms up and I'm shrugging? Just look at your teenager's back. Have them take their shirt off. If there's a huge divot between their shoulder blades, we've got a problem. Well, it's not a problem, it's growth, right? We've got to fix those things, right? You look at how they move. They bend their knees first. When they even get in the batter's box, how many kids like immediately, and that's taught, right?
Yes. Yes.
Bend your knees first. That's absolutely the worst thing you possibly do. So some of it's like old teaches, and some of it's just poor movement. But from a pitching standpoint, because again, I go back to this, Mikey, you could be the worst hitting instructor in the world, right? Kid goes 0 for 30 on the weekend in the tournament in Georgia. Oh well.
Yep.
If you're a bad pitching instructor, you could end up on your student could end up on the operating table. And when you're on the operating table, a couple of years ago, we had a kid pass away from a blood clot. Because anything can happen when you go underneath the knife, right? Stuff can happen. We had a big sports writer here in Boston, Dick Schaap, who died during hip replacement surgery because anything can happen. And it's just too much, too many. Too much stuff going on. We just had, a kid in our next show, we're going to be talking about Little League, but, what no one really talked about is that a kid came out of that game after 4 or 5 pitches before in the California side because his elbow was hurting him. So that's a kid who's probably hurt, right? We haven't heard much, it was the home run overshadowed that, but he came out after he only threw a handful of pitches.
Wow. I didn't see that.
Yeah. So it's just
Not surprised.
No, it's just, and they're happening younger and younger and younger and younger. And to me, it's preventable. We've talked, I don't know how many times we've talked about an avatar. It seems like everyone is talking about, they got all this fine, equipment to say, oh, well, this angle and this angle and this angle. Okay, well, what's the good angle? Like, what should it be? And right, everyone talks about, well, there's the problem. Okay, no one wants to talk about the fix.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I think because first and foremost, no one's really acknowledging a problem. I mean, this is something that you would think even people like on ESPN, regular announcers would talk about, even though they're not looking, they don't have an answer, just to acknowledge like, wow. I mean, it took us when we first started talking about this, 2 minutes to look up the numbers on the injury rates and how bad they
remember that site. We have to take that up again because we have to save that. We have to look back, and that was like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yep. Mine, and it's what we expected, but even seeing it, expecting it, it's still pretty eye-opening when you see it, in front of you all the years together, and it's really pretty crazy. But yeah, because people do know how to fix it. I know we do. And again, it's not going to make you bulletproof. It's not going to make you, it's not going to guarantee you'll never, ever injure yourself, but it's going to put you in a much, much, much safer position. And so I want to ask you with all this, because I have my opinion on this. I think you know what it is. I want to ask you, and so everyone listening can hear about it. because we talked about pitching instructors, and if you're a bad one, you could get a kid hurt. Should there be two different kinds of instructors? Should there be throwing instruction and pitching instruction? Should they be separate? Or at least
Wow.
taught separately?
That's a great question. Well, what's the difference, right? And I think further that it should, let's back up and say, what are the qualifications of an instructor? Here's the qualification you got to get rid of. I played.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. Great. Right?
Yep.
Meaning, again, you can't get, I mean, obviously, everyone say you can't get hurt swinging it bad. We can pull abs and we can do all that. But pitching is so technical with your mind-body connection. You need to have a background of anatomy, physiology, kinesis. You need to know how these things work and why they work. I mean, any pitching instructor who teaches you to do this should never teach again.
Mhm.
Because the basic of kinesiology, the scapular humeral rhythm, they just violated by engaging your upper traps, which is opposite of what should happen. So, no, I mean, pitching, all throws are the same. It's just that for my piece, right, you trust me to, when your arm is hanging off, right, you trust me to get you back on the field, but then I'm not trusted to work with you when you're healthy.
I know. Yeah, that's a perception thing, right?
That's how that doesn't make any sense, right?
And that I think that's what I'm getting at, Kevin, too, is like, so people go to a pitching instructor, and I know I've had pitching instructors who are good instructors in terms of, you can learn control.
Mhm.
It's right. So anyone that knows pitching knows it's pretty easy to teach control. It's easy to learn control, right? Learning how to maybe maximize generating force from your body, stuff like that, or even balancing, hip hinging, all that stuff. But the arm, they never touch. And so when the arm's bad, right, this pitching coach could be really good at getting this kid to throw the ball where he wants and maybe even get a little more velo out of him, whatever. Maybe he's good teaching pitch design, right? How to teach this kid to throw different pitches, but the arm's out of whack. And so like, I look at it as two separate things, or at least that's how I approach it. So if I get a kid, I'm going to work on how he throws first. I'm just going to focus on the throwing. Then we'll make that throw. Once your arm's in a good place, now we'll add that to a sort of a pitching motion. And I know that that's not happening out there. Cause again, and you've seen it too. You've even heard it. Pitching coaches go, "Oh, I don't touch the arm." You don't want to touch the arm. In fact, you hear people go, "Oh, if you touch the arm, you're going to hurt the kid." What? Based on what?
Right. You need to have a body first mentality, right? Like you've got to take care of the body and get that body working neurologically, kinesiologically correct. Because again, we work out for two reasons. First and foremost is to stay healthy. Second is to increase performance. I don't see any of those happening in sport across the board, right? Like I was watching, speaking of ESPN, they had, during preseason football, right? Their reporters are like literally right on the field, and you see these guys warming up haphazardly, right?
Mhm.
Knees over toes, doing things that I'm cringing, and I'm like, dude, where's the strength coach? Where's the person saying, I was watching like Aaron Rodgers, like, dude, what is that? What is that? A squat? Your knees going over your toe? Like, what are you doing? So it's just, I don't know. I just cringe, and I don't know. I'll just keep hammering the drum that maybe someone will be like, we're going to try to fix this movement first.
Yeah. The body. Yeah. The movement is obviously the key to everything. And that's when you learn, you've been doing this a lot of years, I've been doing this a lot of years, and everything that I teach from a swing, even everything makes sense, right? Turning your hips first makes sense. You think, you're going to have that. These muscles are stronger than these muscles. And it's going to allow me to, when I do get to contact, to extend my hands, keeping the barrel in the path of the ball, not swinging in a circle as this ball is moving in a line to me. All of these, where their hands go in load position, top of the chest, top of the strike zone, outside the shoulder, outside the hip, right? Close to the body, more control, hit the inside pit, everything. You go, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense. just like a basketball shot makes sense. Just like I'll use the analogy again. If you saw somebody shoot a basketball, then jump in the air, right? You'd go, you would know by sight that it's wrong. You go, that can't be the way. You know what I mean?
I love that analogy.
So, and I think it really is as simple as understanding that it's basic, natural human sequential motion that drives all this. And then, not doing anything wild with that. It's almost like someone had that. And then we said, all right, now what happens if I really reach back? It's to me, Kevin, it's no crazier a thought than when pitchers used to do this because they thought they were winding their arm up, which is the word term wind up, right? Because they thought it would go whip back faster.
Yep.
But at least then they didn't have the knowledge we do now. You know what I mean? But it's no crazier to me than that. So,
all right,
anyway.
everybody. We have a YouTube channel. Search Prove It Live. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We have our website, proveitlive.com. You can email the show at info@proveitlive.com. We do get emails and we do discuss topics. And hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll be back sooner rather than later.
Yes, we will.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you, everyone.